Well, hey everyone, and welcome to the show. Today we're going to start a couple of apps that are looking at serverless architectures using Firebase. Now, if you've never played with Firebase before, you can think of it as a suite of remote services that you can just make use of from your client-side application. In fact, put together in such a way that you really don't need much else. So they've got all kinds of stuff like authentication, they've got stuff in there for a real-time database, which is what we'll be looking at in today's show. There's all kinds of analytics that you can use in there, file storage, like just a whole suite of goodness hosted on Google infrastructure that can scale up to, whatever you're going to get to, or scale down to whatever you want to get down to. So today I want to start looking at that by looking at the real-time database aspect of that. So imagine that you don't have to spark up your own server or write another Express app for your backend, but you could actually just maybe use a turnkey database in the cloud that has the bonus of when data changes, it automatically syncs to other clients. Oh, it's just such super cool infrastructure, and I can't wait to dig in. So today we're going to start that journey by looking at a quote of the day application. It's going to be fun. Thanks for hanging out. Well, as you can hear, I'm pretty excited about this whole serverless architecture potential for this kind of stuff, especially using Angular out front and then having a backend service that's somebody else's problem to maintain. So I'm going to just do a little demo app today to take you through how this might work in experiment, and so we can learn along together. So I've built this quote of the day. This is going to be our quote of the day app, and the objective for today is to basically take our list of quotes that we pull from a remote database and put them all in here, and then provide some mechanism when the server changes that this client will automatically refresh using just Firebase syncing out of the box. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to have to install a couple of NPM modules. So Firebase and AngularFire2 are the ones I'll need. Firebase is just the base set of APIs that Firebase provide, and AngularFire2 is the endorsed Angular2 integration for that, which provides some really great convenient services and APIs to make this using this in an Angular app super easy. All right, so before I do that, let's actually create our database. So if you go to the Firebase website and go to the console, which is console.firebase.google.com, you can create a new project here. I've already created this quote of the day project, and I'll tell you why in a sec. So we got our quote of the day project in here, and then we're actually going to have to create some data for it. So if we go into a database, I've actually created the database already here, and I've done that because I find this UI like really difficult to get right. So here I've got quotes. I've created, you can have whatever structure you like. It's a freeform JSON database, but I've just decided to structure it as quotes with some IDs, which probably should be goods, but for this example, these strings will be fine, or numbers. And then we have our actual attributes, author and quote. I've populated a bunch of these. If you want to populate another one, I'm going to take you through this because I find it so confusing myself. So I'm going to go plus next to the quotes, and then I'm going to go 06 to add the next one. Then I'm not going to provide a value, but I'm going to go plus again, and then I'm going to provide a value, so author Glenn Smith, and then I'm going to go back up here and add a new quote. This is outrageously good software. Okay, and then I'm going to go add. All right, now I've added that, and now I have this nice tree type JSON here that's ready at the back end for me to slurp down and run in my quote of the day app. So let's get that happening. So how do I integrate this database with my AngularFire2? Well, you need some configuration stuff. Fortunately, these Firebase guys are fully on the ball. So if you go to the home screen and you click add to your web app, it will bring up everything that you need in this config element here. So we're going to do all our configuration in an Angular module because that just makes a world of sense. So I'm going to put in here our Firebase config. I'm going to make this a const because it is a const, and I'll call this, I don't know, Firebase config. Okay, I've got my constant, and now I'm going to need to initialize it. And there's some helpers that those NPM modules we installed earlier give us, and the first one is called AngularFire module. So I'm just going to copy and paste that line there. AngularFire module.initialize app Firebase config. That is basically all of your configuration done. Now this is wavy and underlining because I haven't yet done the imports, so I better go back and do those. There's 2 imports that you need. I think officially you only need the second one, but I found on Windows you really need the first one as well, otherwise the build doesn't happen nicely for you. So I've got my 2 imports here, which will be in the show notes, and then I've copy and pasted my initialize. Now I'm now in. I've now actually configured Firebase and it's good to go, but I haven't made use of any of the goodness in there just yet. So let's just set ourselves to work on making use of that. So let's go into our component, our quote list component. This is our current list of quotes, and there's just, well, nothing in there just yet. So I'm going to first of all, inject our AngularFire service. So I'm going to make that a private property. I'll call it AngularFire. And then, oh, that's our init. Let's try again and put that in a constructor. Boom, and then I have a property. Now it's complaining about AngularFire because I haven't yet done the import that gets that. So let me just import that here. Now, okay, I've got my AngularFire service and it's injected. So what can you do once you actually have an AngularFire service? What kinds of things? Well, you can obviously pull back a list of quotes. So I'm going to just define my list of quotes first, and I'm going to make them any, and I'll tell you why in a sec. Now, I want to set that quotes to something, right? So what can I actually do? Well, first of all, I can go this.af to get a handle to my AngularFire. Then I can make use of either auth or database. In my case, I'm interested in database. We'll have a look at auth in another show. And then I can call all sorts of useful utility things on them. The most important or most easily accessible one is list, rather. So I can say list, and I can then give it a path into the database. So I'm going to say quotes. And this is going to return to me, if I hover over that, it'll say this is going to return to me a Firebase list observable. Okay, so this is going to, because this is an asynchronous operation, it's going to return an observable, which is the Angular foo that people do. So I'm going to now type this thing so that I can make better sense of it and reason about it later. Observable, and it's of type any at the moment because I haven't got any strongly typed quote object just yet. All right, so what have I done? I've injected an AngularFire service. When the view sparks, I'm then going to go off to the database and asynchronously query this quotes, and I should get back from my database, if I have a look, a list of JSON objects under quotes. So there'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them, and so it'll be an array of 6 of these objects, and then they'll have their properties as specified in the database. Okay, so I want to render that in a view, so I'm going to change my quote component here, and I'm going to just add some markup again. Copy and paste it out of Semantic UI, and then I'll talk you through the changes. The only change I've made here is in let quote of quotes. I've piped it through an async pipe, and if you haven't seen this before, this is for the situations that return observable. You can put them through an async pipe, and then this will refresh as that observable resolves. So inside here, I've got my author and quote elements, which I've already populated on the database, and then I've used one more cheeky one here, which is $key, which is the actual parent ID here that I've used to identify these things in the database. So I've just cheekily returned that because I'm going to use that as my ID in the table. So let me save that. If we have a look here, put your quotes here, I'm hoping that this is going to refresh, and that when it does, I'll have my table. And then here's my big list of things here. Now that's pretty darn awesome. Now that itself is kind of cool. I've got, a remote server nicely being used here, but what's even super cool, if I go into Andy Hertzfeld, who's got a Z at the moment, and I remove that Z, you'll see that that element changes instantly. It was magic, man. It was totally magic. And if I said Z, and then totally changes straight away, so which is super cool. Now that itself is kind of cool, but you might be wondering, well, how can I apply some queries to this data? It can't just be like always a list. Well, again, got you covered. If you go into the quote list component, this list takes also an ability to take a second parameter, which is all sorts of query stuff. So if you're doing pagination or any of that other good stuff, there's convenient stuff for all of that gear. So I'm just going to put that in here. So this is going to be query, and then in query you can do all sorts of things. I'm going to do, you can do limits, equal to, order by. I'm going to do an order by, and the one I like is this order by child, which lets you order by some element that's a child of the key you're returning on. So I'm looking at quotes here, so I'm going into quotes, and so I'm going to be iterating over these things. But then I can sort them by a subfield here, like the author. Okay, so I'm going to sort that by author and save that. And you'll see that when this refreshes, instead of it being sorted by this ID field in the first field, we'll see it refresh and it'll be sorted instead by the author field. So Andy is here at the front here. In fact, if I was to take Andy and then edit him, this is just also super cool. Edit him to put a Z in front. He'll move straight to the back and things will be refreshed. So that's it really for today. I wanted to just show how you could just access a real-time database, see it change on the server side and instantly update it in the client, and how to use AngularFire to do that sort of stuff. On the next show, I really want to dive into actually locking into a particular object, so dipping into this object and then editing it on the client. So you can see it can be changed at either the server and the client, and that's going to use a different method rather than .list. I'm going to have a look at that .object method. So that's going to be fun. Make sure you hang around for that. But until then, go and experiment, go serverless, pull down this repo from GitHub and have a bunch of fun. It's going to be awesome to hang out over these next few days and look at these serverless architectures with AngularFire. Thanks for hanging out. Hey, stop the presses. There's one thing I forgot to show you in this show that's really important. When you've created your database, you need to go into these rules to say who has access to it. Now, we'll dive into these in a different show and we'll look at how you can use OAuth credentials and whatnot to lock down stuff and use multi-tenancy and all sorts of good gear. But for now, just need to make sure that your read is changed to true so that you can actually read the database if you're trying it at home. So that's just super important and I forgot to mention in the show, so just wanted to grab it right now. Cool. You guys stay special.